As tensions between the United States and Iran escalate, the world is watching one man closely: Kim Jong Un. Many people assume that if Trump hits Iran harder, North Korea will get scared and back down. But the reality may be the exact opposite. On February 28, 2026, the United States and Israel launched a massive airstrike on Iran. Iran's supreme leader, Ayatollah Ali Khamenei, was killed. Iran retaliated immediately. The war is spreading across the entire Middle East, entering an explosive new phase. But here's the conclusion: Kim Jong Un is far more likely to tighten his grip on nuclear weapons than to shrink back in fear. In February, North Korea concluded the 9th Congress of the Workers' Party. They publicly declared expansion of nuclear forces. They stated that any improvement in U.S. North Korea relations depends entirely on America's attitude. From North Korea's perspective, the Iran situation doesn't show the necessity of giving up nukes. It shows the necessity of keeping them. For North Korea, the most important question is simple: can the U.S. strike directly at the core of our regime if it decides to? In this latest incident, the U.S. and Israel targeted Iran's nuclear facilities, military command centers, and the supreme leader himself. Trump publicly emphasized this as his achievement. The message to North Korea is clear: the U.S. is willing to use extremely high levels of military force when necessary. But here's what most people miss. When North Korea sees this, they're not thinking, we should give up nukes to survive. They're thinking, without nukes, we're in even more danger. 38 North has pointed out in past analyses that it's difficult to place Iran and North Korea on the same level. Iran does not possess nuclear weapons. North Korea has made nuclear weapons the core of its national security strategy. Another 38 North analysis noted that North Korea has a very strong awareness of the need for effective deterrence. Recent Reuters reporting confirmed that North Korea has made its nuclear state status a fait accompli and effectively rejected any calls for denuclearization. Kim Jong Un may be tense, but that tension won't push him to the negotiating table faster. It will push him to cling even more fiercely to the tools that ensure regime survival. Recently, Kim Jong Un stated he would increase the number and capability of nuclear weapons. He drew a line: U.S. North Korea relations depend on whether the U.S. accepts North Korea's demands. At the same time, he used far harsher language towards South Korea. Right after the Party Congress, North Korea announced expansion of nuclear forces. Kim symbolically gifted new sniper rifles to high-ranking officials, demonstrating internal unity. This isn't just ceremony, it's a signal. Regime loyalty, military control, leader-centered order, all being reinforced. This aligns with North Korea's recent emphasis on nuclear expansion, AI-based weapons, drones, underwater launch capabilities, and satellite strike capabilities. The Iran situation doesn't end in the Middle East. The Iranian airstrikes affect oil prices, shipping routes, international diplomatic order, and signal U.S. willingness to use force. All of this influences other conflict zones. AP and Reuters reported that after the attack, Iran's retaliation, instability in the Gulf region, and international calls for de-escalation all intensified simultaneously. In this environment, North Korea may try to raise its strategic value. Here's the key: North Korea always views international crises as opportunities. The deeper the U.S. gets pulled into the Middle East, the more North Korea calculates that direct pressure on them will ease. Conversely, if the U.S. continues to demonstrate ultra-hardline tactics like the Iran case, North Korea may accelerate its nuclear deterrent buildup even faster. Either way, one thing is consistent: North Korea is unlikely to weaken or retreat easily. This aligns with expert assessments that the Kim Jong Un regime has entered a stable, long-term governance phase following the recent Party Congress. Trump's attack on Iran may make Kim Jong Un nervous, but it likely made him more obsessed with nuclear weapons. That's why many people may mistakenly assume that this incident will bring North Korea to the negotiating table easily. In reality, it's more reasonable to expect North Korea to propagandize the legitimacy of nuclear possession internally even more strongly, and externally to negotiate at a much higher price. North Korea's recent reaffirmation of nuclear expansion, along with its insistence that better relations with the United States depend on a change in Washington's attitude, reinforces this interpretation. From the U.S. perspective, executing operations like directly invading Venezuela to arrest President Maduro or directly assassinating Iran's Khamenei would be far more burdensome to carry out against North Korea. The Korean Peninsula is geographically situated between major powers: China, Russia, and Japan. If the U.S. launches direct military intervention, there's a high probability that China and Russia, which share borders with North Korea, would intervene militarily. Moreover, China, Russia, South Korea, and Japan are among the world's top military powers. A conflict here could spiral into an uncontrollable global war incomparable to Middle Eastern conflicts. Additionally, North Korea is a more attractive bargaining chip for the U.S. in negotiations with China and Russia than Iran is. North Korea also possesses long-range missile systems capable of striking the U.S. mainland. That's a major burden. North Korea may attempt localized missile provocations, as in the past, to increase its negotiating leverage, but the likelihood of directly provoking South Korea is low. South Korea's military power ranks among the world's best. Along with the US, Israel, and China, South Korea is one of the few nations with its own missile defense system. South Korea does not possess nuclear weapons, but it has destructive weapon systems like the Hyunmoo missile, capable of destroying Kim Jong Un's underground bunkers more efficiently than nuclear weapons. This military disparity acts as a strong deterrent preventing Kim from provocation. North Korea will likely continue using South Korea as leverage to increase its bargaining power. International order is shaped by those who survive. Once again, the international order is shaking and falling into a vortex of change. Israel and the Middle East, Russia and Europe, China and Taiwan, North Korea and South Korea. A single wind that began in Israel and Palestine has become a butterfly effect, plunging the world back into the chaos of a great whirlpool. If we do not prepare for how the international order will move forward, it will be difficult to protect our assets and our lives. Iran lost its supreme leader. The regime is under attack. But North Korea is watching and learning the opposite lesson. They're not seeing deterrence fail. They're seeing what happens when you don't have nukes. Trump's strike on Iran wasn't a warning to Kim Jong Un to disarm. It was proof that he should never let go. If you want to understand how geopolitical shockwaves reshape power balances, not through assumptions about fear, but through the strategic calculations that dictators actually make when watching other regimes fall, subscribe to Endgame Economics. Because the lessons nations learn from each other's destruction determine the wars that come next. Stay aware, stay prepared, stay ready.